When Nintendo first showed their new Zelda game for Wii U, it was planned for release in 2015. Then they delayed it to 2016 and later to 2017. A few weeks ago, multiple sources said the game won't even make the launch of the Switch, but will come out a few months later. It's just a rumor for now, but it does worry us. We sat down with GameOver Jesse to discuss why Breath of the Wild keeps getting delays and what this says about Nintendo's current state. You're listening to Zelda Postmeshers. Hey Jesse, nice to have you here as a guest.
Yeah, I'm excited anytime somebody reaches out for me to be a part of what they're doing.
Actually, we haven't done a podcast in a while, but I thought this was a good reason to start doing that again. So, about this rumored delay, what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was, is this true or not? Because, which I guess that's everybody's, and because I didn't want to get upset about something that I didn't think was 100% accurate, but at the same time I still didn't want to have hope of when January comes and they have the official reveal of the Nintendo Switch and they talk about the launch lineup, and if Zelda's not in there, I don't want to have my hopes up and then get let down. So I was kind of in this I guess on the fence of 50-50 chance it could be true or it couldn't be. But the longer that I've had time to think of it, Nintendo's delayed this game so many times already and for so long that it just wouldn't surprise me if it did end up getting delayed. So I mean, if you're a fan of gaming as a whole, then it's not really that bad because you have other stuff to play. But when you're just a fan of Zelda and you play a few other games here and there, then it's a big letdown. Because the last delay, we had Twilight Princess HD to kind of hold us over. And that was, I think, what they said about Wind Waker HD was that was the game they were putting on the Nintendo Wii U. That way Zelda fans would have something to play while they wait on Breath of the Wild.
And then they came with Hyrule Warriors and a few more remakes on the 3DS, and but this time there's nothing. And I'm glad. I would be annoyed if they announced Skyward Sword HD, which wouldn't make sense yet. But either way, I'm trying to keep my expectations low, and after a few days after the rumor, I started to accept that it could be true, that it's probably true, and I'm just hoping we'll get it in May or June. That would be great.
Yeah, and I mean there are enough people talking about this rumor to give it some legitimacy, because it's basically the same people that have been talking about all of the Nintendo Switch rumors, which most of turned out to be true.
Yeah.
It's just one of those things that you don't really want to believe, even though you kind of know it's going to happen.
You almost have to. Yeah. What I don't really understand is how some Zelda fans are actually excited about the delay. They're going like, oh yes, we don't want a rushed game, so I'm glad that they're delaying it.
Yeah.
But it's not like we want Nintendo to rush the game and put it out while it's still full of bugs, etc. No, we wanted Nintendo to be on schedule,
Yeah, and the thing is, are you familiar with how Majora's Mask came to be?
Yep, it was. It got the green light because they said they would make it within 1 year, and I think they took 1.5, but it was very short.
The whole point of Majora's Mask was rushing to get out a new Zelda game before the GameCube came out. So, that game, the whole concept behind it, the entire time it was being made, it was being rushed. So, technically, a rushed Zelda game wouldn't turn out to be a bad game, since a lot of people look at Majora's Mask as their favorite Zelda game. It's even though it only had the 4 main dungeons, 5 if you count Iconic Castle, it has the most intricate side quest and story of any Zelda game.
Yeah.
Skyward Sword kind of touches on it because in Skyloft there are a lot of side quests, but in Majora's Mask, the side quests, it's not just in Clocktown. There's stuff to do in all of the areas and secrets to find everywhere. So the fact that they were able to do that in a year to a year and a half makes me wonder what exactly Breath of the Wild's going to have in it, since it's taken 5 to 6 years.
Yeah. Well, of course, Majora's Mask is not really a fair comparison because they were just reusing the engine of Ocarina of Time, and
True.
most of the programming work was already done. But if you look at the Wind Waker, for example, that was made in 2.5 years, I think.
Yeah.
On new hardware with new engine, and it's also a darn good game, you know.
Yeah, that's also a fan favorite for a lot of people.
Yeah, and I also agree that Skyward Sword, I like it personally. I like the story, I like the motion controls, but it does not show that they spent 5 years developing it.
Yeah, whenever Skyward Sword, whenever they were talking about it, they said that the thing that took the longest was getting the accurate motion controls, because they tried to make, whenever you swing your Wiimote and then Link swings his Wiimote, they tried to make it look like Link was swinging the sword as accurately as possible, but then they found out with the art style they were using, if they made like the bending of the elbows and everything look as realistic as possible, then it wouldn't seem right. It kind of gets into that uncanny valley kind of thing, so they had to take it a step back and make his actions a little bit exaggerated so it would match the art style. So perfecting all of that is what took so long with Skyward Sword, and plus they were making a game for the Wii that was trying to compete with games that were being developed in HD for much more powerful consoles, so they were probably trying to pull as much power from the Wii as possible.
And I think that's the reason for the delay on Breath of the Wild, because for the first time, well, I guess the Wii U was also an HD console, but still they were hampered by its lack of power, I think. But finally they're working on a strong engine, or a strong machine, and they're building not even a next-gen game, but a current-gen game. And apparently they're having so much trouble with that. So... yeah,
I think... like... what kind of gets me excited for this is we've seen what the Wii U version looks like, and we can assume that I keep wanting to say NX version because we've been referring to the Switch as the NX for so long, so I always have to stop myself to say Switch, but we kind of assume that the Switch is going to be at the very least a little bit more powerful, and hopefully closer to the PS4 range. Not quite as powerful, because it would be incredibly expensive to put something like a PlayStation 4 in the palm of your hands. Maybe in another 5 years or something, but not anytime soon. Unless you want to pay like $1,000 for it. But
have the battery run out within an hour or so.
Exactly. Yeah. And so the thing with that is, we know it's going to at least look a little bit better than what we've seen on the Wii U. And we've seen what the area looks like in the starting region, like the Great Plateau. But something that they said with the recent rumor of it being delayed, they said one of the reasons was they were trying to polish up the games and get rid of the bugs and everything, which is something that every game has to go through towards the end of its cycle. But they said they were having problems with the Wii U version, like slowdowns and stuff like that.
Okay.
And you played through Skyward Sword, right?
Twice.
Okay. At the very end of the game, before you go into your final boss fight, you have to go down the ramp, and you're fighting all of the Bokoblins, and there's like 40 different Bokoblins on screen. And even in Hyrule Warriors, when there's a lot of enemies on screen, it kind of slows down a bit, and then there's like the fade away or the draw distance, whatever you want to call it,
etc.
It's really close to the player, so you could be 15, 20 feet away from a bunch of bokoblins and not even know it. And then as soon as you take 2 or 3 steps, there's all of a sudden 10 more. And I think we've seen early on in Breath of the Wild, so obviously it's going to start out easier. We see like groups of 3, maybe 4 or 5 bokoblins. And they're around their campfire doing whatever they're doing. But once you start getting deeper into the game, I imagine there's going to be little campsites that you come across where there are 20 to 30 different bokoblins. And I think that just like in Hyrule Warriors, it's going to be a lot harder for the game to process all that. So there's going to be the slowdowns, and maybe that's what they're trying to fix.
Yeah. Who was it that said? Was it Emily Rogers? She said that localization was taking longer than expected.
Yeah.
And after the localization, they still had to test the game, and it would take 6 months. And it's a bit of a strange story, because I was thinking, how many games per year do they localize? It's like 20 or so. And why would their most hyped game suddenly be a problem?
Yeah. I got curious about that as well. So I actually have a friend who used to work at Nintendo writing for the different games on the localization team. He doesn't work there anymore, but he did whenever they were still working on Wii and 3DS games, and I think very early Wii U games. But I don't know if you know him, but Mike Drucker.
Doesn't ring a bell.
Alright, he moved on, and now he writes for The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon. But where he used to work for Nintendo, I messaged him, and I said, hey, I was just wondering the rumors of Breath of the Wild being delayed because of the localization process. What are your thoughts on this, and what would your responsibility be if you were still at Nintendo and working on this game? And he said, it could be anything. Usually huge games will have a couple of localization editors on them. It's everything from in-game dialogue to system text, like please insert or please reinsert disc, to other language localizations, French, Spanish, etc. And then he went on to say, I forget, but this one has spoken dialogue, right? If Japan makes any changes mid-game or adds anything to the game, then all of the teams would have to re-record dialogue in their own language to reflect what would normally just be text. So he was basically saying, like, if the game was almost complete and then they decided to add a new dungeon or something like that, then suddenly they have to get all of the voice actors back and retranslate everything to have them re-record their lines.
Yeah. I guess that's true.
Yeah,
and it's not just English; it's also German, French, Italian, Spanish. I think usually.
Yeah.
So that might be a reason. Still, I don't understand why they would have to take 6 months to test the game. It's not like different sound files break the game.
I don't think that. Like, that was one of the parts that threw me off, because like, I was still talking to Mike about it, and he was basically saying where most of everything should already be done, you would only take like maybe a month to, like, once the game is completely finished, to retest it, because everything has already been pretty much tested so far. Like, if you add in a new dungeon, it's not necessarily going to completely break all of the other dungeons.
No, exactly.
You're just going to have to test that new area or whatever new mechanics was just added. And the thing with Nintendo games is, I made a video talking about this as well, but usually open world games like Fallout or Skyrim, stuff like that, whenever they release, especially the PS3 version of Skyrim, like, there's a lot of bugs.
It was broken, right?
Yeah.
Very low frame rate.
Yeah, and then, like, there's weird anomalies and glitches where for some reason, I don't know if this was just somebody doing a weird hack or if it was an actual bug in the game, but it was basically the game thought a cow was a dragon. So, like, the cow just all of a sudden started flying backwards for no reason at all. And it's just other stuff like that. We've seen the Assassin's Creed game a few years ago where some of the characters were rendered without a face, but they still had eyes and a mouth. And
Yeah.
you don't see things like that with Nintendo games.
No.
Like other
When a
companies,
game is done, it's really done.
yeah, Ubisoft, whoever else is working on these games, they'll release the game whenever they think it's finished, and then over the course of the next 6-7 months or until the next game releases, they'll just keep updating it with patches as they find these bugs.
Yeah.
But with Nintendo, unless it's Smash Brothers or Mario Kart, which keeps getting DLC,
Yeah.
there's not really any patches. Like Wind Waker HD released, there was no patches for it. Super Mario 3D World released, and to my knowledge, there was no patches for it to fix any broken things in the game. It was just the game was 100% complete. All of their games, like you would be shocked to find the average Nintendo game to get less than an 8 on a scale of 1 through 10. Like whether it's Mario Kart, a traditional Mario game, Zelda, Metroid, all of these gets like 8, 9s, 10s, unless someone's just not a Nintendo fan. So
yeah, well, it's not like I'm doubting the quality of Nintendo or that I'm critical about the way they work. I like it when I buy a game and it's finished,
Yeah.
But what puzzles me is that usually Nintendo games, Zelda games, get so many delays. And after Skyward Sword, they actually said, we thought 5 years was too long to make a Zelda game. We're going to try to make it in 3 years.
Yeah.
And I was excited, It's like,
I remember that
2014
interview
already.
as well.
Yeah. And then, okay, they announced it's 2015, but now it's probably summer 2017.
Yeah.
And I'm just a little bit puzzled that they're still having trouble estimating how long a game will take them, as opposed to some other games that are just done when they say they're done, or other developers who, okay, maybe they could have used a few more months to finish it up and make it better, but still it's not a delay of 2 years, not very often.
Yeah.
For Zelda it almost happens every time. But I think
oh,
yeah, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, I think what it is if they delay the game because there's certain bugs that need finished, or if they want to add like a new mechanic to the game or something like that, then while they have maybe 1 or 2 groups of people working on that, then they still have the rest of their team that needs to be focused on something, and not everybody can just be used to be finding bugs, because there's people that are hired specifically to like make new models or to color stuff and make things look visually pretty. Their jobs aren't necessarily just to go in and like find whatever glitches they can. So I think what happens, or what may happen, is while the people that are looking for the bugs or glitches or whatever they're doing, Nintendo says, okay, it'll take them maybe a month or 2 to finish this. What can you guys do within that month or 2, so you're not just sitting around or working on something completely different? So maybe they get the idea of, okay, well, there's this area in the game that doesn't have much going on in it. We can go ahead and add a new village or a new town or a new dungeon, mini dungeon, whatever. And then while they get working on that, maybe they get caught up and they aren't able to finish it in time with the other people. So now it brings everybody else back, but they don't want to take it out of the game because it's such a new feature, or one that they're excited for. So I think maybe it's something like that. That's otherwise, if you delay a game once or twice, I think that would be it. But that's the only thing I can think of that would make you delay and delay and delay.
Yeah. Well, what you say is true, because they said that the physics engine was something they added just a few years ago. It wasn't in there in the beginning, but they were playing around with it, and they discovered that it was so great that they just had to use it.
Yeah.
And that just costs, I don't know, maybe a year extra, whatever. Also, Aonuma told something in an interview. It was his own lack of communication skills, because people were asking him feedback, and he said, okay, I don't like this, this, and this, but he forgot to mention what he did like. So the team, they removed everything, including the good things. And then later he saw the same demo again, and he said, what happened to the, and they had to put it back in.
Oh wow.
So that could have cost just a few months, it's how it goes.
Yeah, and there was another quote. Well, actually, I've seen interviews where either Miyamoto or Aonuma, each of them have said this several times, that while they're working on one game, they'll come up with ideas that are better suited for another game, or they'll come up with something that they... Like if the game's nearing its end, but they come up with a really great idea, instead of delaying the game for another year and putting it in, they'll save it for the next game. But where this is supposed to be like the ultimate Zelda game, maybe these new ideas that they get, they want to put it in there, even if it means that it's going to be delayed, to ensure that it is the ultimate Zelda game. And then the exciting thing that I look at is with Wind Waker, they reused that engine for Twilight Princess, and then they reused the Twilight Princess engine with a few modifications like the Motion Plus and everything for Skyward Sword. They just changed the art style through each one. But with Breath of the Wild, if they do that again to where they reuse the engine, where the main reason this game originally got delayed, or that it took so long, was like you said, where they mentioned that they created this brand new engine that they basically fell in love with. They don't have to go through that process again.
No.
And hopefully, just as with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, where it only took a year or two for the next game to come out because they reused all of the assets from the previous game, maybe they can do that again and come out with whatever this game's Majora's Mask would be.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping. And that was also a reason I wanted the game to be delayed to, well, not delayed, but ported to Switch when it was still NX, of course. So that should be good. Let's hope that it comes out before the end of the life cycle.
Yeah.
What do you call it? Yeah. Yeah, so, and I'm also sure that it's gonna be worth the wait. If you look at it right now, it already looks amazing, and we've just seen one area and some snippets of different areas.
Yeah. The only thing that I'm not excited about is, with all of the shrines we've seen, they all share that same blue aesthetic atmosphere.
So far.
Yeah.
I hope that they'll change it and give more variation.
Yeah, like I hope, like if you go to a shrine that's near Zoro's domain, it'll be more water focused, or if you go one near Death Mountain, it'll have like a red atmosphere instead of the same blue that we keep seeing.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe lava could be seeping, or magma could be seeping through the walls.
Yeah, and then in the same way that you can use the ice blocks that come out of the water, maybe when you get to the fire side, you can, in the same, like in Skyward Sword, you could throw the water on the lava, and it would make like a hard rock that you could jump on to use as a platform. Hopefully there's something similar in this game to where you can use your Sheikah Slate and make a boulder come up instead of using ice to come out of water.
Yeah.
So maybe there'll be stuff like that. And then if we do get all of those traditional dungeons, I think that'll be a nice way to not make the game as repetitive, because if you're going through these 100 mini dungeons or shrines that all basically look the same, you'll need those large forest-themed, fire-themed, or water-themed dungeons to make the game less repetitive.
Yeah, exactly. A while back I thought of doing a podcast about dungeons specifically. But yeah, I'm hoping there will be more than 4 dungeons. Then, as like there was this rumor that said 100 mini dungeons and 4 normal dungeons.
Yeah, and half of that
there will
came
be more.
to be true. So.
Yeah, exactly. So it feels like we're just waiting for the confirmation of 4 main dungeons. But yeah, so I'm hoping that at least the shrines will have more variety to them, and but yeah, we'll see. We'll see about that.
All right. So something I want to ask you. Sorry, were you going to say something?
No, not about this topic.
All right. I was basically just going to ask really quick. The past few years, by some miracle, even though they're remakes, well, most of them at least, we've been getting new Zelda games every single year, sometimes multiple, like Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask, A Link Between Worlds, Triforce Heroes, Wind Waker HD, Hyrule Warriors Legends, Twilight Princess HD. And we've been getting all of these games within just the past few years. But 2016 so far, aside from Twilight Princess HD, has been kind of barren. And then next year, the only thing we know is going to be coming out is Breath of the Wild. But with 2018, or for around the holiday, like if Breath of the Wild comes out in summer or early 2017, do you think they're going to have anything for the holiday season for Zelda fans, or do you think in 2018 they may have anything planned? Because something that I always bring up is that 2018 would be the 20-year anniversary for Ocarina of Time. And I know we've already got a 3D remake of Ocarina of Time, but I think that would be a great time to make a full HD remake of Ocarina of Time, and possibly with this new Breath of the Wild engine as well.
It's hard to imagine a remake of Ocarina of Time, such a small game, in an engine made for such a huge world.
Yeah.
But yeah, they'd have to really... I'm not sure if it would still be a remake or like a re-envisioning or...
Well, what comes to mind for me is if you've seen the Unreal Engine Ocarina of Time thing.
Gorgeous.
That one person by himself is working on. And obviously he doesn't have any of the coding or any of the in-game mechanics to where like you step on a switch and a door opens, or like the puzzles of the game. But he's creating the entire overworld and the character models and everything by himself. And if he can do that in like a year or two with his spare time, then imagine how quickly Nintendo could remake Ocarina of Time with a new engine. Or it doesn't even necessarily have to be a new engine. If they just took Ocarina of Time 3D and just upscaled that to where it renders in HD, kind of like how the Dolphin emulator, you can render old games in HD. If they did that and just put that with Majora's Mask 3D, then I think that would be absolutely perfect. If you got like one cartridge, I was going to say disc, but if it's for the Switch, it'll just be a cartridge. And it's just the HD collection of these two games. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, that's something I can get behind. Just an HD update of those games. And also with Majora's Mask, we as Zelda Pod Smashers, we had so many ideas, so many things they could have implemented. Like you could make selfies in the Wind Waker HD. Why not in Majora's Mask 3D? It would have been perfect because you have so many masks, etc. But they can do a lot of things with these games. Still, it's hard for me to get excited about an HD remake or any new release of Ocarina of Time. Somehow, I'm afraid it will disappoint or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I recently played through Master Quest on the Ocarina of Time on the 3D cartridge. Was the second time Master Quest, but after that I was like, okay, I've played Ocarina of Time 6 times now. I'm fine for a few years, you know.
They've officially released that game, on the Nintendo 64, on the GameCube twice. I know they had the collector's edition, and then they had the one that was in the Zelda collection with Majora's Mask and the 2 other Zelda games. And then with the pre-order of Wind Waker, you got the Master Quest version of Ocarina of Time. And then they re-released it on the Virtual Console for the Wii, and then they re-released it again for the Virtual Console on the Wii U. And then they have the remake on the 3DS. So it's literally every single console since the Nintendo 64 has seen its version of Ocarina of Time.
Yeah.
So I completely get why you're saying that.
I don't know. I thought your previous the question before that was more interesting. Like, will they have something for holiday 2017?
Yeah.
The only thing I can come up with is Hyrule Warriors 2.
Mm-hmm.
But that might be too soon. I'm not sure. But that's just a separate team, a separate developer. And I think if they would be working on another Zelda game right now, they would rather just take the team and let them help out with Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, and at the same time, we don't really know what the handheld Zelda team's doing. Because they have, the home console team that's working on Breath of the Wild, but we don't know what the team that's been working on, like A Link Between Worlds and Triforce Heroes, is currently working on. So...
Yeah, true. Unless they're working together, like on Breath of the Wild.
Yeah, they could be, and in a way I guess it would make sense, since Breath of the Wild being on the Switch does make it a home console title as well as a handheld title. So getting their handheld Zelda team to come and make it would be interesting. Something that I always thought was the Team Grezzo that they hired to make Ocarina of Time 3D and then Majora's Mask 3D. Yeah. I always was hoping that in the same way they reused the engine to make Majora's Mask from Ocarina of Time, I was hoping that they would see what a great job Grezzo did with Ocarina of Time 3D. And we've seen they got a little bit more freedom with Majora's Mask 3D. They were able to add in the 2 different fishing spots. They changed where the bank is located and some of the other stuff in Majora's Mask.
Yeah.
So I always thought that Nintendo seen like how well those games did, and then since they had enough experience with this engine already, maybe they would be like, hey, you already know what you're doing with this engine. You obviously know how to remake the Zelda games, but take the engine that you've come to know inside and out and create your own Zelda game using the engine. Not necessarily a third Hero of Time game, but just a new Zelda game using that engine.
Yeah. Although I'm not sure if they can still get away with the same engine on the Switch. I think if they'll do another Zelda game next to Breath of the Wild, more a handheld title, it should be top-down again. Just to differentiate it from Breath of the Wild, from the main game. But
I know there is I think it was Ayanuma who said that he would like to make or revisit the ideals of Triforce Heroes, where you're making a multiplayer Zelda game, but with the Breath of the Wild engine.
Oh yeah.
So, and just because you're using an engine doesn't mean the game necessarily has to look identical. Like, you could still make a top-down game using the Breath of the Wild engine. So,
true.
I think one of the most versatile engines is Unreal Engine, and we've seen racing games, fighting games, adventure games, like all different types of or genres of games with that one engine. So I'd imagine it would be pretty simple for them to take this engine and make a top-down Zelda game.
Yeah, but I think Grezzo is working on their own game, right? Their own franchise.
Yeah, Grezzo is now. Yeah.
It was. It's also a dungeon crawler, I think. So. Yeah, lots of people were saying they should have made this a Zelda game. But I think it's also nice for them to make something to be creative for themselves instead of always having to work with the Zelda franchise. That depends on what they want. Maybe they'd love it. Frank just came online, my buddy, and shall I add him for the last 10 minutes or so?
Yeah,
I will.
I'm sure he has some great ideas or thoughts about the delay.
That was part 1 of the podcast. I decided to cut it in half here. In part 2, Frank joins us and we continue to talk a bit about how Nintendo sometimes seems stuck in the past. It will be up soon, Until that, share your thoughts with us, and thanks for listening to Zelda Pod Smashers.